This is the IT Director's Playbook, the podcast where we sit down with IT directors, ed tech leaders, and industry experts to tackle real-world tech challenges, honest conversations, expert insights, practical takeaways. Let's dive in. Patrick Robinson with Jones County Schools.
Hey, Jesse, what's going on today?
Thanks for being here.
Thank you for the opportunity.
What we want to do is just hear from you and your stories, stories where it didn't happen.
Okay.
First of all, how did you get started in IT?
So, I had a mentor in high school that kind of led me down that path. Got a scholarship to the local JUCO. Worked in the computer labs there as an assistant, and while I was going to school, and they sent me down to the University of Southern Mississippi on a scholarship contest, and was fortunate enough to win the programming scholarship for IT. And went to Southern a little early because of that scholarship. And while I was there, I was introduced to the Department of the Interior, and they came through and hired I guess the suckers, what they call the best and brightest, but had the opportunity to intern with them as a programmer and worked on the offshore oil and gas leases programming for the Department of the Interior, Minerals Management Branch. Did that for a number of years and kind of got tired of flying a desk, stuck in a cube all day, and was introduced to networking and hardware in about 93. And so I started on the hardware side of things, and I liked the challenge and the fact that it was different every day, but the thinking skills that went with programming and problem solving applied straight to that. And so took off from there. And Jones County School District was our biggest customer for that company. And when they started looking for an IT person full-time, they asked me if I knew anybody, and I said, yes, me. And was fortunate enough to get that job in 95, and started out as kind of a MacGyver on the IT side. If it had a plug on it, we worked on it.
What was the state of the IT?
So no servers, no networking. Pulled a lot of Coax in the early days. We started in the offices setting up a little simple network so they could run their student information system. And we did that for a couple of years until the internet started picking up steam and the state started supporting that.
How many computers were in the schools at this time?
Probably 600. At Jones County Schools,
Okay.
we're the largest rural school district in Mississippi. We have about 9,000 kids, so we're the 7th largest in the state, but we're small compared to some of the bigger states. If you go out west, we'd be tiny. But we have more road miles than any other county in Mississippi, so we're large geographically. We had 18 sites at that time, so I was putting a lot of miles on my car going back and forth, but we had about 600 computers. And we wanted a way to manage the kids, so the student information systems were just getting started. And then as the internet started to become more of a thing and not just a fad, we started trying to connect the schools together, and everything kind of grew from there.
That was 95.
Yeah.
It's 2025. How have you seen tech evolve? And how is your problem solving in 95 translated to 2025?
I think the way we approach the problems are the same, but as far as how it's affected things, in 95, we needed a way to track, say, for example, in the cafeteria, we wanted to track the student lunch data. We needed to know how many kids ate free, how many kids ate reduced price, what they ate. Did they pick the meatloaf, or were they getting the chicken fingers? All of that needed to be kept up with for purchasing and planning. We put a network system in the cafeterias that the lunch ladies had to key the data in. And I think the first day we had first graders that were still trying to eat their lunch when they were getting on the school bus. Those ladies in that cafeteria could make a mean shepherd pie, but they couldn't type their name on that keyboard. That's just not what they did. And so we kind of had to train our users a little better. And where we are today, to answer your question, if the computers go down in the cafeteria, I'm not sure we can have lunch anymore. Think about it. You go by a restaurant and the sign's on the door that says computers are down, we're closed, and it's the busiest part of the day. Everything we do today is connected. Your refrigerator, the vending machine, your HVAC systems, everything's online now. And I think back in the 90s when we were all getting started, we knew it would evolve, which is one of the reasons I wanted to get on board. I wanted to be part of what potentially would be the biggest network in my community, and that's the school district. And today we have over 16,000 devices in our school district. We have a more advanced network than the hospital or the military installations that are around us. But we ended up, just because of our users and applications, it didn't feel like it was going to be that way, but that's what it's grown into.
as an IT director, you got to solve the technical problems, but you know better than probably most that it's a relational job. It's a people job. How big is your team?
So I have 10 people in my department,
Wow.
myself included. We have 14 sites now. We've built some new campuses, so we've been able to consolidate down from those original 18. I do not have a tech at every school, but I have at my biggest high school, I have just one tech. But the other techs, they all have a 2-campus responsibility, so they can never be in 2 places at once.
Okay.
And my job is to back them up and not give them more than they can handle, because I've been in their situations. I know what it's like to be overwhelmed. And so I just try and keep them focused on the project in front of them. And of course, August with the start of school is just unreal.
Right.
I mean, that's the busiest time of the year.
Right.
August and September.
Right. Yeah. So speak to that a little bit more. That feeling of overwhelmedness. So there's a lot of tech directors who they might not have 10 guys on their team. They might have 2, and they're feeling overwhelmed.
So when I started, we had 18 sites, and I was it. And so they gave me an old retired bookmobile that the furniture had been stripped out of the RV, and it was set up like a library, which was a perfect workshop. So my job was to take the little mobile tech workshop and drive it around to our rural schools and park it out front, and I was like a mobile tech workshop. And if there was an office computer that was broke, I had parts inside the RV, and I'd crank my generator and I'd sit out there and work on the computers and carry them back in. And if something was needed, if we needed to run some cabling, I ran the cabling.
One man band.
Yeah, there was no, if you're talking to who's your cable guy, that would be me.
Right.
Who's the guy that configures the computers? That too would be me.
What about when the printer's broken?
Who does your server? That would be me. Well, the superintendent's printer, a bookkeeper printer won't print. Who fixes that? That would be me.
Always.
So it kind of started that way. It's diversified now. Now it's almost like the automotive industry. You got a paint and body guy.
Right.
You got an engine guy. You got an interior guy. But back when we started, you had to be a MacGyver. You weren't necessarily great at anything, but you had to be good at a lot of things.
Right.
And that's kind of what made me successful and be able to survive. And you got to love it. Anybody that thinks that they're going to do it for the money in K-12, they need to go find something else to do, because you got to love it. And so what I've tried to do is work as hard as our teachers have to support them.
What do you love most about?
Solving someone's problem. I'm an adrenaline junkie. That feeling you get when you fix something, the success that comes with it, know that you've made somebody's day because you got the projector fixed, or you're able to help them with that system that's been driving them crazy. That's what gets me up in the morning. That's been my purpose for 30 years.
So you built that team.
I did. They're not techs, they're ninjas. We call them ninjas.
You said, okay, we need this, we have this need, and I've got to find a guy for that. And you, I'm assuming you've hired these guys.
Oh, absolutely.
How did you get your talent? How did you build your team?
Well, there's a lot of techs that are really good at what they do that wouldn't be suited to be in a classroom with children or teachers. There's some that maybe are a little introverted, and I mean, I'm a nerd. But there's some that I would just want to slide the broken part through the door and let them fix it and slide it back through. But the techs that I have to look out for are the ones that have the communication skills to talk to the teacher. Because remember, our teachers are professionals. They're very good at what they do. So we kind of have to dumb it down, to put it on their level so that they can understand the problem that they have that's relative to them. But these are highly intelligent people. And so if I can find someone that can relate to the teachers that way and kind of help them see through and behind the curtain of what's wrong, then I've got the right person that can make that connection, and I can teach them anything else. And unfortunately, we do train a lot of people to go to work somewhere else because we start them and we train them up and they get good, and then they get opportunities to go somewhere else, because people that have the technical skill and the people skill set, they're very desirable. But those are the 100%. Ones that I look for. If we have a kid that's hacked my network, if we have a kid that's maybe been a little bit of a delinquent in getting into the systems, or ran some type of a finger app where they shut my wireless down, after that kid gets in trouble, I'm standing outside the door and say, hey, how old are you? Would you like to do this for real? If you want to come work to me as an intern when you're 18, I've got a job for you. And so from that point, we can take that skill set because they're bored.
Right.
The reality is those kids are smart.
They're super smart.
And I don't want them to get them that intelligence to get them in trouble.
Amazing.
So what I try to do is bring them as interns, and we let them blow the computers out. I mean, we don't give them the keys to the kingdom. They don't know any of our passwords or anything like that. We start them out small, and we develop a relationship with them. And then how they respond to that controls how far they get to go. If they really kind of find their tribe, their family, then when they go to junior college, I'll work their work schedule around their school schedule. They work for me for 2 years, and then they can go to work. They're employable at that point. Some of them even have their A+, or Cisco, or are working on it. Or if they go off to a 4-year college, then I feel like they're equipped. And we've got one right now that was that way. When the first day you couldn't see his eyes because the hair that he had on, the way he wore his hair, it covered up his eyes, and you couldn't see his face. Very introverted, could hardly get him to talk. And now he's a very successful programmer for an access control company. And he's been with them for about 2 years, and he's doing fantastic. But it just took finding his tribe, a group that he fit in with that were as nerdy as he was, and we're certainly that. We've had another young man that we weren't real sure whether or not he was going to get it. And after hanging out with us for a little while, I think that the home life that he came from, maybe the IT side wasn't considered to be that employable. I mean, he was just a gamer, right? So you're never going to be able to make a living for that. You can't pay the rent if you're just a gamer. But once he kind of fit in and saw that we were gamers too, and we knew what an NVIDIA 1050 or 1070 graphics card was, and we knew what a 14th Gen i7 was, and we knew what an i9 processor was, and we could talk about specs, and we could kind of communicate with him. He really started to just blossom. He kind of came out of his shell and started talking more, and now he's working for another IT company. He's doing fantastic with it. And then I've got a couple that work for me full-time now. How
much of your team came up through your school district?
I think all of them at this point.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I've got the two ladies that do my student information system. They're really my MIS girls. They started in the offices of the schools. And then as we put in those information systems, they just took to it, and they were really good at it. And so they self-promoted themselves, and now they're in charge of the entire system. And then the techs that I have, they're all homegrown products. Some from the universities that came back. That I have two that have robotics degrees that just enjoy the challenge of it every day. I have two that are from junior college, and then I've got two that I think are in junior college right now. And one's working on their degree. They're working for us, and they're taking the night classes, some of the things that are available online now. That's what they do. They make me look good every day. They do. They do a fantastic job. I'm lucky to have them.
What are some of the biggest crises you've had to handle?
So it's the first day of summer school. They have plans in the summer to do some type of a upgrade. In this particular case, the first day of summer school at one of our 3 high schools was the day that they decided to level the property that we were about to start construction on. And they went out with the backhoe and dug up the fiber and cut the fiber on the first day of summer school. Summer school in which everything was done virtually and online. All of our teachers were virtual and online, the instruction taking place. So no internet, no schools. Anytime you deal with a Monday after a major storm, you never know if your battery backups are going to come back alive. You don't know what racks are going to come up or did come up or did not come up. So we fight those fires. 2003 at the other district that I worked for, the Friday of Memorial Day, the middle school burned to the ground, and the Novell server that housed all of the library books and content, we did on-site backups. The entire school burned down. We had the server in the basement of that building that had been repurposed. It was kind of a hardened room. I walked down after the fire was put out the next morning. I had actually been on vacation with my family, so I was in flip-flops.
Oh, my gosh.
I pulled the motor.
Got a phone call?
Got the phone call when I got back into cell phone service, because that weekend I had been out of cell phone service range camping, and they couldn't get to me. So got back into town. My phone starts blowing up like an alarm clock. I drive straight over to the school in flip-flop shorts, park my motorhome out front, walk down the steps with the building still smoldering, walk down the steps to the basement, go into the hardened room, disconnect the cables from the server, put the server under my arm, and walk out with it. That was a pretty crazy day. Yeah.
Amazing.
And we were able to recover everything off that server. The backups burned up, but the server itself was fine. Very lucky on that. So we were able to print out the entire inventory of books from the library, which is what the insurance company needed.
Amazing.
Yeah, that was a close call there. We got lucky on that one. We learned to do offsite backups after that, or at least the importance of offsite backups.
Some lessons are learned the hard way.
Yeah. Lots of cabling tricks over the years, trying to figure out how to get the cable, the Cat 5 or Cat 6 cable from point A to point B. At one of the high schools where we have a street that goes through the middle of the campus, we were trying to get a fiber optic cable from one side to the other, and we couldn't go under the street. The city wouldn't permit it, but we had a pathway for an old intercom line that was approved, so we had an aerial right-of-way. And I used a crossbow with a bird blunt on the end, so nothing sharp, nothing pointy. It had a big rubber blunt on the end of it, and I tied a pull string to it and shot the crossbow bolt across the street between the power lines, and we used that to pull the fiber.
Amazing. So every cabler's dream, Patrick.
You have to. We didn't have a bucket truck. We didn't have a ladder tall enough to get up on the pole, or the ability to throw it to the other side above the power lines, or in between the phone lines and the power lines. There was a window there that we had to get it through. Got it on the first try.
Amazing.
And everybody, the maintenance guys just laughed at me. And I said, hey, ingenuity.
That's a legendary
You got a problem,
move.
you have to solve it.
I think anybody who's been in the cabling position with their head up there and trying to get it from A to B has thought about, what if I had a crossbow? But
what I did, we did it. Yeah. We've anytime you get an intern and you want to know if they're for real, when we were doing a lot of cabling, we could put them in the attic. You know, if they were serious about it, they'd get the job done. If they weren't serious about it, they didn't last too long. We've gone from no cabling to twin acts back in the days of the old IBM AS400.
Right.
With the green screens, right? to Coax.
Right.
I guess we were running maybe 10 meg at the max. Mm-hmm. And then we did Cat 5 that could do 100. Oh, we'll never do more than 100. Well, they got this Cat 5e that'll do a gig. Mm-hmm. And now Cat 6 and fiber and the out-the-door projects that I'm trying to finish up before I retire. I'm replacing all of our elementary switches with 10 gig.
Yeah.
I did the high schools last year, so they're 10 gig now.
What are you going with?
As far as brand? So I've got Brocades in my high school, and I've got Cisco in all my elementaries.
Tough to beat that.
Well, for school districts, it's obviously price is important, and Cisco's not always the cheapest. We've been fortunate to have won some of our bids, but the Brocade and Cisco have a lifetime warranty.
Right.
So as long as the product is not out of life, it's under warranty. And so for a school district, that's a long time. Yeah. The switches, the gig switches that we put back in 2015 in the elementary schools, those don't go out of warranty support or product support till 2027. And I'm already starting to replace those with 10 gig. So they, anytime I've had a problem, which is rare, but anytime I've had a problem, they just replace them.
Yeah.
It's,
amazing.
So the school districts that don't have a lot of money, those types of things are important.
Are you involved in any of the bids?
So yes, what I typically do is write the tech specs. We want the lowest best price. I mean, we're school district. We're trying to get $1.20 out of every dollar. But what we have to be careful of is that we don't get material that's just drop shipped from the other side of the country.
Right.
So we always try to include a required vendor walkthrough. We want the vendor to come on our campus and walk the hallways, look at the data closets, look at my power concerns. We want them to come in and actually see our campus. And that's a requirement for them to be able to bid.
I think that is really valuable. And I bet you a lot of younger guys wouldn't think about that. The difference between talking to somebody out of school and walking a school, it's just things you can't know.
They can quote us a blind price on something.
Right.
But if all they want to do is just ship us the product, and I don't know where they would get their labor from, but we require base configuration and installation on our switches. Our engineers do the final configuration.
Right.
But we want them racked and stacked, and we want them to load the base configuration, stable code, just so that we know we're getting people that have a local interest in our district. So that if we do have a problem, I'm not going to have to be dealing with somebody on the phone all the way on the other side of the country. It's just smart business for us. Folks that have an interest in our community and in our school district. Got to be careful with your tech specs because the way the budgets work now, if the wrong person is not all the person that's in charge of the money is not always the person that has the technical knowledge to be making the decisions.
Right.
So that takes a little bit of a team effort.
Right.
And when the bids come in, we always look for lowest best, but not always lowest. Lowest is not always best. So sometimes you got to go, with if it's an off the wall brand, whatever, and you can get something that's got a longer mean time between failure, or has a better product reputation, then that might be your best solution. Most of the time it's price, but you've got to meet all the other boxes too.
Right.
How we got to where we are on our networks has been challenging. A lot of our schools were built back in the 60s. In the city school district, some of the buildings were even older. I think the central office was built around 1918. It's a beautifully historic building. The walls are 1.5 feet thick. Try getting a Cat 5 cable through a wall that's 1.5 feet thick. Try putting a computer lab in a classroom that has one electrical outlet and it's shared with the light switch. So I've literally seen extension cords taped around the door frame,
Right.
plugged into a surge strip that has a teacher's personal refrigerator, paper shredder, electric pencil sharpener, computer monitor, and printer plugged into it. And then they want to plug in their projector, and they don't understand why the circuit keeps blowing. That's the school that burned down, by the way. But anyway, it was, it's hard to accommodate today's technology in the older buildings.
Yeah.
And we've had to change the mindset that once you put a computer in a classroom, it's not like a chalkboard. You don't put one chalkboard in a classroom and call it done. You can't just put a computer in a classroom and call it done. And we have so many bright people in our community that have learned over the years with us on refreshing the hardware and keeping the computers and the software up to date, that not only did they invest in our school district with technology dollars, but they reinvested because these things have to be refreshed. We tried to do that. And I'm really proud of where our districts, both Laurel and Jones County, you cut me, I'll bleed blood from both those school districts because they're teachers and kids from our community. My son has gone to school in both those districts. And we're both products of the district. We want to do the best we can for them. And, we're invested to make sure that they continue to exceed, be successful.
Maybe a lot of IT directors have a great relationship with their superintendent. Maybe some don't. Speak to that dynamic of you've got somebody above you that has the responsibility of not just the IT department, but the whole school, but you've got the responsibility of everything under your wings. Talk about the importance of that relationship and working upward and then also working downward. We've talked about the tech side and you're a problem solver, but speak to the relationship side. How do you navigate those relationships and how important are they?
So I think the best thing maybe about my role as an IT director and before that as a technology coordinator is that my boss, which is, depending on what position, was either the assistant superintendent or the superintendent. Probably the best part about that job is that they didn't know exactly what I did, but they knew that they really needed me. The worst part about that job is that they didn't know what I did. So there were some times that when I needed them to know what I was doing to get the support or the funding to do a project, they didn't understand that. So again, it's a double-edged sword.
Right.
I always had the freedom to go out and do what needed to be done, but then there were times that because they didn't know everything that we were doing or how all the moving parts worked, it slowed us down. But I can tell you in the 3 decades that I've been doing this, I think I'm on my 7th or 8th superintendent. I'd have to stop and count.
Wow.
So a lot of different personalities.
Right.
Every single one of them have been so supportive. The school boards that I've worked for have gone above and beyond. We've had some laughs over some things that have been done, but we've also we've had some heartache over some things that were done too. But they have always been there for us to try, because their goal is the same of ours, to support the teachers and move our district forward as we educate the children of our community. And it's a pretty nice feeling to know that the skill set that I have, my talents that God gives us that we're born with, to be able to put those talents right back to work for my community. And I think when I walk out, I'll walk out with my head held high, that I've done the best I could. That's my goal right there.
What's your favorite piece of tech gear right now?
Oh, I'm a gamer, so I love to see the processors getting faster, the drives, the NVMe drives with everything getting faster. I love to see how quick the new operating systems run. Anything hardware-based I'm into. I'm amazed at what we can do with wireless now. We have our intercom systems that are on the network now. I love the flexibility of being able to configure things without having to go out and hit dip switches or change out cards or, sit there and physically program things. Same with our cameras. Just everything moving so fast. Anything wireless. I'm makes me happy to see those things. Our teachers. So if you go into the classroom now, the teachers would say the student response systems where they don't have to call out kids in the class that didn't get the answer right. She uses clickers. Every kid gets to respond anonymously with the clicker on what the answer is to the question. And the teacher can see with live data if there's a student in the class that's not getting it, or if there's an area that the class didn't respond to as she was instructing. She knows that based on the answers anonymously, she doesn't have to call anybody out, so there's no guilt or embarrassment by the student, and she can go back and reteach those lessons and then test them again to see for the gains. That type of technology, they've got the student response systems, but we call them the clickers. The audio voice lift systems, which for our middle school and high school kids, I think it really gives them more of a college feel in the classroom. And I think it prepares them for the environment that they're going to be instructed in. And so when the teachers wear the boom mics that have the voice amplification, I think that's pretty neat stuff. And of course, all the projection stuff. We've moved so far from the chalkboard through the whiteboards, and now everything's done either on a projector or a smart board, and the teacher records their lessons. So if the teacher's out and they have a sub that day, all the sub has to do is get in contact with the teacher. Many times the teacher leaves a note or an email on exactly what to click on their desktop, and the whole lesson's already been recorded. All the sub has to do is click play. And everything that teacher has done, that certified teacher has done, has been recorded and played back for the teacher to deliver the instruction.
It's come a long way.
It has.
And you've seen a lot of changes.
Indeed.
Everybody's talking about AI.
Yep.
What do you see AI, the impact it's going to have on K-12 in the next 5 years?
So some of the stories real life stories I'm hearing about are the AI built into diagnostic devices. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how the teacher uses the live diagnostic data to improve the instruction they're already given. I don't think a teacher's going to lose her job to AI, his or her job. I think a teacher that knows how to use AI better than they do is going to take that job. I think the teachers that are prepared and equipped with the AI as a tool, that they will be more successful.
100% agree.
Yep.
Yeah, I've seen that I'm a marketing position, and so it's not that AI is going to replace marketing. It's the people who are using the AI
in
marketing that are going to be replacing.
That's the point I was trying to make.
It is a critical tool.
Yeah.
And I do see that there are some negative things that I've seen with AI, and that's going to be part of all technology that's evolving. But pretty interesting to see where that's headed.
Yes.
If you weren't a tech director, what would you be doing?
That's a good question. I'm especially thinking about retiring. What will I be doing? I'd love the correct answer is supposed to be sitting on a beach, right? Probably something's problem solving. Maybe a little consulting, trying to help some of the other districts or other places, my peers that are just getting started, giving them advice or how we did it. Well, this might not be the only answer, but this is how we did it, type thing. And if you do this, then you should expect this results out of it. But just as far as hobbies, same thing, solving problems. I'm a muscle car hot rod guy in my spare time. So for me, going out to the shop and working on my 7442 is therapy. I can go out there and spend all day in the shop, whether I'm replacing a water pump or just changing the plugs or something like that. I'm still using my hands and problem solving and that type of stuff. I think it's just my nature. Again, it's the reward from solving a problem or making something nicer. Yeah.
If you had to write an IT director's playbook, what would be your top 3 rules?
Come to work every day because the teachers depend on you. You have to be there when the technology has to work. Simple, effective technology. Come to work every day. Be resourceful. Be willing to think outside the box to solve the problems. And maybe listen, obviously. because sometimes I think we don't listen to our teachers with the problems they have, and we try to rush through it. And so just taking the time to listen and then figure out what you can do to help them and commit. If you say you're going to do it, do it. Don't let that voicemail or that email go unanswered, because those folks, when they reach out, they need help, and they don't have anybody else to ask. If you don't respond to them, they get frustrated, and that affects the kids out in the classroom.
And every school district has to, find their guy, and they have to be able to solve some technical problems. Although there's a lot of tech directors who aren't. They were teachers,
Yes.
and they didn't have that background that you had, and we're knowing how to solve all the technical problems growing up, and now they have all the technical problems are now on their head. Speak to that IT director who's not going to be able to solve the problems themselves.
You want to surround yourself with a team that you know you can trust, and if they don't agree with you, talk it out, because sometimes they may make a valid point. It might be something you overlooked. And I've certainly I've had people on my team that didn't always agree with how I presented a solution the first time, but if we could sit down and talk about it, and you have to be able to admit that you're wrong. And there's been times where the solution that I had wasn't the one that we ended up going with based on the argument. And so we've had some great conversations, and as a result of that, I think if we can agree on the solution, we know we've got the right answer. I think as an IT director getting started, you have to realize that you're not going to know everything. Mm-hmm. You may be the director, you might think you're the brightest crayon in the box, but you may not be prepared for every challenge that you're going to see in K-12. And so you have to be flexible. You have to be willing to learn, and sometimes you just have to say, I don't know, but I'm going to go figure it out, or I'll find somebody that does. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes that's my job, is going out and finding the person that does know. Everybody's good at something. I'm not really great at any of those things, but I'd like to think after 30 years I've gotten pretty good at a lot of things. And that's helped make our team successful. And we're also a teaching school district. So the techs that work for me, again, I go back to what I said before. I'm looking for ones that have the relationship skills, that can talk to a teacher without insulting the teacher. They have to be able to have that, let me explain how to do this without making that teacher feel insulted. If they can do that and kind of break it down for them, and then you have to be willing to teach those techs how to get better themselves. We teach new skill sets every day, and we call it leveling up. And you talked about the pace earlier. So in my district, I call my techs ninjas, because in August and September, we go into ninja mode. We are so busy. You're talking about just going as fast as you possibly can. And so we have to turn the jets on. And so when we go into ninja mode in August and September, a lot of times these techs don't even get a chance to get clocked in. When they get out of their car in the parking lot in the morning at the schools, there's 2 or 3 teachers that hit them with a problem. Right. They're on the way down to the proverbial Miss room, and before they can get down there, 3 people have stopped them. Yep. Hey, I need you to, and we do ticket tracking. We track tickets, and we have a ticketing system. But that time of the year, all that's out the window. Right. And we tell them, hey, if you'll just put a ticket in, I don't want you to lose your place in line. But also, I've had 10 other people ask me for something in the last 15 minutes, and if you don't put that ticket in, I'm going to forget. So if you really want me to come back to your room, then go in there and put that ticket in, and I'll see it. Yeah, I think a ticketing system. If the computer in your room doesn't work, which is, hey, I can't put a ticket in, my computer's broke. Well, walk down to first you can do it on your phone, right? So, we can play that game. But there's always something up in the office or the library for them to put their tickets in. Yeah. Cell phones. So cell phones have been interesting. Cell phones originally were not allowed in the schools. Every kid's got one. When was this? I would say up until maybe the pandemic, schools were not allowed in the phones. So, excuse me, I said that wrong. Phones were not allowed. Up till 2020? Yeah, I would say 2019, 2020, the kids were not allowed to have phones at school. Now, they all had them. Right. They had them in their pocket. Yeah, you guys would take it. Yeah. They would, depending on the infraction, the teachers knew they had them in their pockets. So as long as they kept them out of sight, they really weren't a thing. But when we finished our network build out, which was 2019, we had an access point in every classroom. We had fiber to all the racks. We had gig switches. We had prepared for every kid, every user to have 2 devices. We knew they'd have a tablet or a smartwatch and a computer.
Yeah.
So we'd kind of overbuilt the network in that anticipation. But being a rural district, we didn't have the money for that. We knew that the only solution we were going to have was for a BYOD solution, so the students could bring their computers from home. We were going to be able to support them with bandwidth and connectivity, not only in access but density, so we could support all those devices at one time. But we didn't have the money for the devices, and so my thought was that cell phones would probably be the answer for that because the kids all had them. And then we would have a school stack for any kids that were disadvantaged.
Right.
We'd make sure there was a tablet or something available for them. The kids are very real tech savvy now, so they're not worried about jumping on your network. Like they'll use their network for anything they can't access on my network for a filter, and then they'll jump back on my network for the faster speed or maybe to save their data plan for everything else that they want to do.
Yeah.
Now what's happened, and we weren't the first ones to do this. We've imitated some other very successful districts. We've figured out how to use the cell phone. Let the students use them as part of their class instruction. And so if a teacher puts OOS on the board, that means she expects those devices to be out of sight. OOS, out of sight. And if there's a lesson plan that she wants them to get started on, they can use their cell phones to look that up. If it's been approved by the teacher, they can get in there and do that. And of course, as long as they're on my network, they're through my filter and everything's protected. But the pandemic really changed that, because in Mississippi, our superintendent at that time, Carrie Wright, wanted every student to have a device. She wanted a 1-to-1 device ratio in Mississippi. And so she lobbied and received $150 million in Mississippi for devices. And our district ended up receiving $4 million in devices.
Wow.
And again, sometimes you just get lucky.
Yeah.
And we had finished our network infrastructure build out, which was about a 5-year project. But we had finished that in December of 19. The pandemic hit in March. And in the fall of that year, I would say maybe November, we received our allocation, which was $4 million in Chromebooks and iPads and new laptops for our middle school and high school teachers. So every kindergarten and first grade student got an iPad, and then 2nd through 12 got a Chromebook. You want to stress test your network? Drop 9,000 devices on it in one day and see where the bottlenecks are. But we were pretty impressed.
Really?
We had to do a little tweaking, but nobody went home sad that day. We felt like we were winners.
Really?
Everything got turned up. And, of course, the way the project was, the way they'd done it, all those devices came pre-configured, and they had a 3-year warranty on them, accidental warranty. So if anything happened to them, a screen got broke, got thrown out of a school bus window, anything like that, they were covered. So literally, the day they showed up, they were put into use, and we hit the streets running. We were rocking and rolling with those devices. Learned a lot. My skill set had to change. I changed from infrastructure support to build out to, hey, how am I going to make all these applications available to these kids on these Chromebooks? So we got into app management. Of course, every kid then needed an email address. At that time, we didn't give student email addresses. We had one login.
Yeah, when was that?
So right after the pandemic in 2020.
Wow.
We logged
It
in.
seems not that long ago, but then it does seem a long time ago.
It's forever ago in the technology. Yeah. Every kid logged into the computer with an account called Student. So student was how they logged in, and the rights they had were from that student account. Teachers logged in with teacher. And we had if we needed to change the password to keep the kids out, we had another password we would give the teachers at different schools. And once we started giving actual accounts to all the users, then we had to do access control.
Everybody needed an
app
email.
management. Yeah. I mean, who does that? Yeah. You know, every time a kid enrolls, when they enroll in your student information system, you need an email address created. Or if they've unenrolled from your school district, you need to disable that account. And we found a vendor that could help us with that and also help us with app management. It's been real successful. And so now, as soon as that student is enrolled in the office and they get a schedule in our student information system, twice a day, our systems update.
Oh, wow.
And all of that, they get their email address and they have a default password. And as soon as they sign in, it asks them to change their password.
Google?
And we're Google District.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, we also have an alias for Office 365. So there's an alias Microsoft account. So we offer Office 365 that's free It's a Microsoft offering, but we pass that through to all of our staff and students.
Yeah.
So they can get to Office 365. Of course, everything that comes with the Google Suite now that the kids use too, the Google Drive, the Sheets, the Docs, all of that type of stuff that they also use. So the kids, I think the kids today are much better prepared to go into the workforce than they were pre-pandemic. I think the pandemic accelerated all of that. I also think for several generations, the older generations that would have probably never used their app to order a pizza because they'd always picked up the phone and called Domino's or Pizza Hut, during the pandemic, they too had to adapt. So all of that adoption got accelerated, but definitely in hyperdrive in the school districts. Everything, we had to move really fast. And of course, you're talking about problems. You can go back and snip and add this in. So we shut down the pause that they asked for during the pandemic when everybody went home for 2 weeks.
Right.
When
Was it just 2 weeks?
I think wasn't it two for us? I think in Mississippi it was 2 weeks, wasn't it?
Felt like it was longer.
When the pandemic hit, we were on spring break. I was supposed to go see a KISS concert the Friday night or the Saturday after of that week of spring break. And the KISS concert got canceled because of the pandemic, and I was pissed.
And then that's when things got real.
Yes.
I remember my dad was a baseball coach at UAB, and all of a sudden his season got canceled.
Yeah.
And we were like, the playoffs, the NBA playoffs, all of a sudden, the March Madness got canceled.
Yeah.
And as soon as that happened, it was like,
things started shutting down.
oh, the world is about to change.
So we didn't have the devices for our students to take computers home. So we only filtered devices that were on our network. If it was on our network, it was filtered because that's been our responsibility. I mean, if you're not on my network, it's not my problem.
Right.
When our teachers went home and tried to work from home to do grades, and we had an Exchange server, and as long as they were on our network, they were filtered. Now I had an email filter, but sometimes it's hard to protect teachers from themselves. So if a teacher opened an email on their home network, that a link they shouldn't have clicked on, if they're at school, that link is blocked.
Right.
But if they're not on my network and they're not filtered and they click on that link, so within about a week, we actually got blacklisted. We had so many teachers that had clicked on phishing emails and gotten their accounts hacked that our DNS provider blacklisted us. We could no longer send out email. So, and again, in the middle of the pandemic, when you're trying to communicate with all your users by email, we're shut down. So fortunately, I had a small group of mavericks that were Google adopters. And I had not alienated myself from those users. I didn't think the way that they did. I'm a Microsoft guy. But I had this group of users that were just all about Google. So I had another domain set up just for them. And I had a very basic G Suite set up with an OU structure for them. And I probably had, out of the 6,000 or 7,000 devices that we had at that time, I maybe had 100 Chromebooks district-wide. And I wasn't interested in that because it wasn't a Windows device. But I had not alienated myself from those group of users. I'd done everything I could to support them, hence the domain, hence the G Suite setup. So when my Exchange server got blacklisted, my engineers and I spent the weekend blowing off that Exchange server and rebuilding it. We spent about 72 hours rebuilding everything. We turned our email back on Monday, and by Tuesday we were blacklisted again. And we realized that we were past the point of no return, and it was time to do something else. So we turned off the Exchange domain. And again, the superintendent's trying to communicate with all the faculty and staff and can't because
Patrick,
we're blacklisted.
why can't I email?
We could receive emails, but we couldn't send emails. So he can't send out anything. And so after that weekend, and the Tuesday was the day of death, we just decided to go ahead and leave the Exchange server up and turn up our Google domain, which is something that we'd planned on doing the next time we had a change in superintendent leadership, because that's just a good period of transition. It was a good time for us to get away from the little bit older style domain. There were too many dots in that domain, so we were trying to be a little bit more modern. And I had it set up and ready to go because of that small group of users. And so we had no idea we were going to be getting Chromebooks 6 months later. So we turned the Google up on Wednesday. And by Thursday, everybody had their new email address. And we started sending and receiving email.
How many email addresses would that have been?
Oh, about 1,200.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of work, and we were able to export the file. We didn't have anything automated. We didn't have like a OneSync server or anything like that. So we were able to export our user list to a CSV file, do a mass change, replace the old domain with the new domain,
right,
and then import that back into our sys, and then send them out that way. So, I mean, we worked smarter.
Yeah.
But it was still a lot of work. And then we started communicating with Google. So now Google is helping us filter with everything that's off-site, right?
Okay.
And then once we opened back up and the teachers were able to come back on campus, they were back under my content filter and they were back behind my email filter. But when they were off-site, it was a problem with the old Exchange server. But Google, with the filtering that they do inherently, all of that stuff that was happening off-site got nicked in the bud immediately. So that's how we cranked back up on email after the pandemic. And then because we had G Suite and we were learning every day, what we could do with it, by the time we got our Chromebooks and we knew they told us every student was going to have an account, we were already thinking, oh my gosh, how are we going to mass create 9,000 student accounts? And every time we enroll a kid, that's a new account. And every time a kid unenrolls, we need to deactivate that account. How are we going to manage that? So that's when we went out and found a solution provider that could help us with that. And so we now have everything's automated now, like we talked about.
You've seen a lot.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit and tell some of the stories. It's been an adventure. It's been like the Wild Wild West. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks for jumping on.
Got it.
Appreciate you.
Boom.